This is the financial aid session, and we're going to go over some of the major changes in financial aid due to some of the changes in federal regulations. So basically, we're going to go over four areas. We're going to start out with consortium agreements, talk a little bit about SAP, talk about R2T4 changes, and then go over some updates in the financial aid department. We do want to let everyone know that we will be changing the consortium agreement process. We just suggest at this point that we direct students to our office if they have questions about how their financial aid will work if they're attending multiple institutions. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is set up a process where the courses that students are taking are approved before we just sign off on them, so that way we can make sure that basically that the class that they're taking goes towards their degree. It's just a way to make sure that the students are on track and we keep them on track before they go too far off course and may have to run into satisfactory academic progress issues down the road. We'll make sure that a form is sent to all appropriate offices that are impacted by this so they can kind of see what the changes are. One other thing one of the major changes in financial aid regulations are the Satisfactory Academic Progress Guidelines, or SAP. Currently, we have our SAP guidelines outlined on page 15 of the student handbook. Now, you'll notice that on that table, the guidelines are split up into two components, quality and quantity. The quality piece is measured by GPA, so what type of grades and that are the students achieving. The quantity part is based on the earned hours divided by attempted hours. And we wanted to make sure that they're completing enough credit hours to be, basically on track to earn that degree within a reasonable time frame. When students are not meeting either one of those qualities, then we run into basically SAP issues. And so we're going to say that students can basically, if they're not making good standing, or if they're not meeting the guidelines on page 15, then we're going to place them on either financial aid warning or financial aid suspension status. Financial aid warning is similar to the financial aid probation status that we have right now. When students are on financial aid warning, they are still eligible for financial aid. However, one big difference is that in financial aid warning, students are not allowed to be on that for 2 consecutive terms. Whereas a student could have been in financial aid probation for fall 2010 and spring 2011, starting now, a student cannot be on financial aid warning fall 2011 and spring 2012. A student will move from financial aid warning to suspension if they do not make good standing or good academic progress within 1 term. Financial aid suspension, this doesn't change too much. The financial aid suspension does make a student ineligible to receive financial aid. Once a student is on this status or in this status, they only have a couple of options. First, they can either pay out of pocket or they can get a private alternative loan and basically pay using these means until they are back within good standing, as outlined on page 15 of the student handbook, or students can appeal. Students can get an appeals form in A100, and basically students need to just make sure that they complete the form entirely, and that they provide any type of supporting documentation possible to support their case. Once they have been appealed, once they do appeal the issue, students can either be approved or rejected. If they are rejected, then again they remain on financial aid suspension and have to use that either self-pay or private alternative loans. Once a student's approved to regain financial aid eligibility, then they'll move either onto a financial aid probation or academic plan status. Now, students that have an approved suspension, they're bumped up. If they can make good standing within 1 academic term, they will be placed on financial aid probation. For students that need multiple terms, they will be placed on an academic plan. Once a student is on probation or academic plan, they must either meet the requirement to get back in good standing after 1 term or meet the specific term criteria laid forth in the academic plan, or else they move back to financial aid suspension. So the academic plans really need to outline the courses that they need to graduate, and then we're going to need to develop a plan to outline what grades that they need and estimate the term that they'll be back in good standing. So that's kind of the big issue for the financial aid status. Another piece that we look at in SAP is maximum time frame. So really, maximum time frame is 150% of the published credit hours needed to complete a degree. So for example, if a student is attempting to get an associate's degree that requires 60 credit hours, then the student has 90 credit hours to complete their degree. Students above 150% are placed on financial aid suspension. They must complete an academic plan and they must go through the appeals process, and if approved, then submit an academic plan. This past summer, we were working to make sure that students at or above the 90 credit hours were being placed on an academic plan and developing a marketing piece so students approaching 90 credit hours would receive communication about our policy. Just to be clear, if a student is in a certificate program and the published amount is 20, then they would have 30 credit hours to complete that certificate. So the maximum time frame, that 150%, it is geared specifically towards the specific degree or the specific certificate. If students have any questions about why they're here, or if advisors want to know more about this, then they should contact Christina Bratton, Assistant Director of Financial Aid, and she can go ahead and help people understand our process. Another major change is in the return of Title IV funds area. Now, basically, this is a big point of confusion. Ultimately, any time that a student does not successfully complete at least one course in their term, then financial aid is required to perform a calculation to determine if any unearned amount of aid needs to be returned. So when we say that a student needs to successfully complete at least one course, what are we saying? Well, the first piece is students may choose to withdraw from all of their courses. In that case, a student would have all W's, and they would be considered an official withdrawal. That is a student who would qualify for a return of Title IV funds calculation. Sometimes other students, they receive all F's, U's, I's, or some combination of those grades, and also have not by definition by the Department of Education, have not successfully completed at least one course. So they too would be eligible for a return of Title IV fund calculation. There are two pieces that are really important with the return of Title IV fund calculation, and those pieces are attendance and basically attendance, and there's a change in a slight change in who gets picked up. I'll talk about that in a minute, but let's talk about attendance right now. So to give you an example, if we have a student that is full-time, so the cost of tuition is $1,650, they have financial aid of $4,500, which is a mix of Pell Grants and loans, and the student officially withdraws from all their courses on October 28th, but the student ceases attendance on October 4th, then how much is returned? Well, under the old regulations, the student had 100% term completion because the student withdrew on October 28th, and any student that withdraws past the 60% mark is considered to have earned 100% of their aid. So the amount of unearned aid is zero. Well, and this is the way it was up until last term, summer 2011. With the new regulations, however, things changed a little bit. We're no longer interested in the actual date of withdrawal. We're looking at the last date that the student was academically engaged with a course. If the student ceases attendance on the 4th, but waits till the 28th, the new regulations say that he did not earn 100% term completion. We actually go by October 4th, and that's only 38.9% of the term. So what we do then is take that percentage and multiply it by the full-time cost and the full-time aid. and we take whichever's lower. So here we take 38.9% of 1650 because 1650 is lower than the 4500. So the amount of unearned aid is $1,000. So under the new regulations, you can see that this student is going to have a $1,000 bill versus the old regulations where he wouldn't have a bill at all. So attendance is going to be very important to make sure that not only we're recording it accurately, but that that the attendance isn't just someone showing up, that there's that we're really making sure that we're accurately recording whether the student was academically engaged in the course or not. Now again, I had mentioned that in addition to attendance, there was some change on who gets picked up. Now before we were talking about official and unofficial withdrawals, and that would be students that failed to earn a successful grade or a passing grade in at least one class. Well, a slight change on this is return of Title IV funds for modular classes. Now, to give you an example, modular classes are mini sessions that when they're placed together, they fill up an entire period of enrollment. So say summer 2011 is 10 weeks long. If a student's enrolled in summer 5-week one session and the second 5-week session, then that is considered to be 2 modular classes. So again, to give you another example, in fall 2011, it's a 16-week term. So if a student is enrolled in both the first 8-week session and then the second 8-week session, those are 2 modular classes. Under the old regulations, if the student completed at least one class in either session, they were not considered to have withdrawn. There is no R2T4 calculation. There's now the slight change here is dealing with if they withdraw with the class before a session begins. So if a student completes one class in the first session and he or she withdraws from the second session before it begins, there's no R2T4. If the student completes one class in the first session and withdraws from the second session after it begins, then an R2T4 calculation must happen. And then finally, if a student is enrolled in both the first and second week modular sessions or mini sessions, and they withdraw from their first session, they are automatically an R2T4. So to recap, if you withdraw from the first session, you're automatically an R2T4. If you complete the first session and withdraw from the second one after it begins, then we need to do an R2T4. The basic take-home message here is that things are changing. This is a little bit of insight, but it's very complicated. So please direct students anytime that they are considering withdrawing from all their classes to financial aid so an advisor can speak with them. The last piece that we're going to talk about today is just the financial aid updates. Currently, we do have the scholarship application online. They can go to My Forms under the student portal. Currently, the 2011-2012 scholarship application is up, although we are done with the 2011-2012 scholarship applications. We have been accepting them and storing them in case additional funds become available. But starting November 1st, students are able to complete the scholarship applications for 2012-2013. Again, the FAFSA application, as it is every year, the new 2012-2013 application is available January 1st, so that's just a couple months away. We do encourage students to go online, at least begin filling it out. Even if they use estimated tax data, they can always go back in and change the information later. But if we can get their FAFSA in, the earlier the better. And also that the Financial Aid Office is targeting April 1st as the date for the 2012-2013 award letters to go out. And that's why we want to make sure that we get as many students to complete it as early as possible. The 2012 and 13 application for free application for federal student aid, so we can go ahead and get those award letters sent out. And that's all I have for you. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to contact the Financial Aid Office. And I'm available at jspencer03@terra.edu.